morning, good evening, and good afternoon to anyone here in Europe and in the room. Welcome to this second panel that will be focused on geothermal in the Netherlands and also geothermal innovation in the Netherlands. I'm glad to have all the speakers here, all my panelists in the room, so that should make it more easy to engage in the discussion. And before kicking off, I think it's good that you get to know our speakers and also myself. Let me kick it off. I'm Paul Ramsak, working at the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, or RVO, which is a part of the Dutch Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Policy. And I'm also working internationally in a network called GeoThermIca, where public authorities of different member states work together. Let's go around. I will start here on my left. Radboud, if you can introduce yourself shortly, and maybe add to it, how and when did you get into geothermal?
Yeah, Paul, we had a short introduction when we came here this earlier today. You are almost for 25 years involved in geothermal. For myself, about 15 years. I'm a geothermal entrepreneur working in the horticulture sector, as you know, and we are planning, drilling geothermal wells and also operating them. So we have a number of wells running, and one of the wells actually this month realized a reduction of CO2 emission for about 100 million kilograms CO2 during the lifetime, the 12 years it's running up. So that's what I'm doing, geothermal in horticulture sector.
Thank you very much. And on top of that, Radboud is also, I think, on the board of Geothermie Nederland, or Geothermal Netherlands, the branch organization for geothermal in the Netherlands. Next to you, Floris.
Hello, thank
Same
you.
question.
Yes, thanks. Well, I've been involved in geothermal since 2009 from the University of Delft for the Delft Geothermal project. Since then, I did a lot of work as a production engineer for geothermal projects. I did some project management for various wells in the depths between 700 meters and 4,000 meters. And together, alongside those projects, I built this small consultancy firm, which is now doing global projects on behalf of Sproule Geothermal. And I'm leading that team with operations based in the Netherlands and a more consultancy type of work internationally.
Yeah, and maybe for the ones that don't know Sproule, I didn't know either, but I found out that I think the headquarters is in Calgary, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. But I think Floris brought in the geothermal part, so it's talking about bridging. I think this is a perfect example. Next, thanks Floris. Next to you, Jorien, you're working at EBN.
Yes.
When did you get involved in geothermal? When did you decide to move in that direction?
I got involved, my name is Jorien Schaaf. Indeed, I work for EBN. I got involved in geothermal 5 years ago. Before that, I worked in the oil and gas industry. I'm a geophysicist by background. So 5 years ago, I started at EBN, a state-owned company, and I worked there as manager technology, looking into the heat transition and specifically into geothermal energy. And we're trying to accelerate heat transition in the Netherlands. That's our goal.
Thank you, Jorien. And last but not least, Nico. Nico Kuipers.
Co-founder of Tulip Energy. We are an operator in the geothermal energy in the Netherlands. Background drilling engineering, oil and gas, and I first sniffed around in the Netherlands geothermal sector around 2012. Actually, there was a project in Koekoekspolder. This was from a services point of view, and we started with Tulip Energy in 2015. In 2018, we applied for our first geothermal license, and that's how we got acquainted. Right now, we have 10 projects on the shelf which we are developing.
Thank you very much. So you get to know us, at least a little bit. Maybe looking into the Netherlands, as we have the chance to discuss that a bit more in detail today with this panel. For me, I think I've been involved in this geothermal work for 23 years, but I still feel somehow that the Netherlands is the new kid on the block. You know, there have been all these established geothermal countries like Iceland, like Italy, etc., New Zealand. And somehow when we started, it was something completely new. We were a gas country, you know, running on natural gas, and to a large extent we still are. But times are changing, and we will be closing down our largest natural gas field in Groningen before the end of the year. If I look back somehow, and if I also look into the title that I didn't make up, Oogsten Aardwarmte, or harvesting geothermal, I somehow connect this directly to you. You already mentioned it a little bit. In the Netherlands, basically, it was the horticultural sector, the greenhouse sector, that kicked it off.
Yeah, Paul, you're quite right. We live in a moderate climate. We have a lot of greenhouses. We are very good at it. We are maybe one of the leading countries in the world with horticulture production and horticultural technologies. We have also the famous University of Wageningen in the Netherlands, which is a leading university. So, but it's a sector which needs heat, especially during the colder parts of the season. And as was mentioned, we started off with coal, then we went on to gas. And of course, we have to look forward. We started to use about 15 years ago geothermal. And I think we use it as direct heat. So we pump up the hot water, we flow it through in a heat exchanger, and then it goes straight to the horticulture greenhouses. And the big advantage of greenhouses is that you have one connection and you have a lot of demand for heat. So with a geothermal plant, it needs only 5 or 6 greenhouses, and then it's already fully operating. And that's why I think it's a perfect match, horticulture and geothermal. And it's also one of the areas where you can produce for a competitive price heat and substitute natural gas.
Yeah, thanks, Radboud. And if I look back, somehow I remember, back in 2005, I got a phone call from this guy that turned out to be the largest beef tomato grower in the Netherlands, and met him 3 days later. And basically 2 years later, he realized the first, let's say, deep geothermal project, which, if you look back, it's incredibly fast, and definitely the greenhouse farmers, I think, have been entrepreneurs that made the decisions fast and were, in a way, the pioneers that propelled it. Yeah, please.
In addition, Paul, they view geothermal heat as a local solution because you take the heat from the subsurface below your feet and distribute it to your clients in a circle of 3 or 4 kilometers. So they see it very much as a local, regional project. And that is how we started off.
And probably for that reason also, as it's local, somehow they are local, and you have a local solution, you are more independent. But I was thinking of you, Floris. You have become involved in many of the geothermal projects at the greenhouse farmers. Maybe you can tell a little bit about how this went and where it started, where we stand now.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to see the difference between those days where it started and the risks people were able to take for just a few megawatt projects compared to what we are currently doing, where larger investors, larger utility companies, governmental organizations or semi-governmental organizations are building those projects. It started really like a little bit cowboyish. We take the risk, we drill the wells, and then we will see what if it works out. And for some, it worked out really, really well. Profitable, small scale, not too many interference in the area. An ambassador project for the region where the owners told the neighbors what they were doing, and everyone was proud of it. And it slightly changed the environment around it. It became more professional, it became more stakeholder engagement. The government itself became more and more focused on it. It changed the license to operate also. There were some people talking about dangers around the project, and they got exaggerated here and there, significant. And then it was more about risk management. How do we explain the audience that we can do it in a safe manner? And that all developed till where we are now, where larger operators are developing multiple projects, and I think with good teams, good professional teams, which want to make that upskill happening. And I'm super proud that I've seen that initial phase, and it was super, super learnful. So I learned a lot from it by making all those mistakes, which is maybe not super fair to our clients and the people who took that risk. But where we are standing now is, I think, a big thank you to those early adapters, and it is ready now for upscaling. So I'm proud to have taken part of that.
Yeah, for sure. I think without those pioneers, we wouldn't have been there. But it's also true that they say the pioneers, they get all the arrows. So that is probably true as well. Jorien, I'm thinking of you if I think about the next phase. We concluded somehow in this country, I think we have now the geothermal tomatoes, we have the strawberries, we have the cucumbers, I think at Radboud's place, if you're still growing them. But I think what is really, and it was discussed in the previous panel already, what's really the big thing is what will happen to our heat supply in our cities. We used coal, then we changed to gas, everybody's connected to gas, we're closing down gas now, we are no longer an exporter of gas, we have to import it. There's a war raging quite close, but we do have geothermal. So how do we proceed into our cities?
Yeah, that's a good question indeed. Well, that's something that we've been learning, I think, all together in the past years in the Netherlands. That I think geothermal is a very good solution, but as was said in the previous panel already, we need the demand. So we need to go from the horticultural side, where they did a good job. We now need to move into the urban cities, where there is a huge heat demand. But we need to build first the heat networks for this demand. We don't have as many as they have in Sweden, Denmark. So that's a new exercise that we have to make, and that's one of the next steps.
Yeah, and that will come with challenges, but at the same time, I think it's clear to most of the people that it's needed. And the gas prices in this winter, they plummeted. They went sky high. So really, that was the thing that changed in the mind of many people. Radboud.
Yeah, maybe one important addition, because it was mentioned we learned a lot from the first project, but we got also a lot of assistance, and also from EBN. We drafted together with EBN a format for new wells, a standard, an industry standard, which is, I think, publicly available. And so we realized quite a number of other standards together with the knowledge of EBN, but also the knowledge of the other panel members here. So that's not only going to the built environment, but also going to standards and upgrading the quality and reliability of the systems.
Maybe I can add to that indeed EBN plays a good role there now, especially if you look at exploration. The first developments in the Netherlands were not wildcat drilling activities. They were based on subsurface data sets, offset data. It was relatively easy to make that first project for those project developers who knew their ways to the consultants in the oil and gas. If you look at the current phase and development where we are looking at, it's also those white spots, they call it, the potential areas where there is heat demand, but where it's uncertain which aquifers you can drill to. And I'm super curious what the outcome of those drilling activities will be, because that might drive that next phase of real large-scale upscaling away from those exploration and production locations of oil and gas. So those kind of developments an entrepreneur or a smaller company could never do. So the government support is strong there, and it will bring some new developments, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I think it's a pretty important part, because that was also mentioned, that the risk is quite high in the subsurface. We don't know as much as we would like to know. And in the Netherlands, there's a part that is explored by oil and gas. We know quite a lot, but there's also parts there was no oil and gas. We hardly know ever anything. So the government decided to put money into seismic acquisition, but also drilling scientific wells to, take away the risk for entrepreneurs to start geothermal projects. So that's ongoing at the moment.
And basically, for the ones that are not familiar with the Dutch law, I think the Dutch mining law is one of the most transparent, if you want so. All our data, mining data, becomes open in the public domain after 5 years. You can just check the internet, analogy.nl, and you will find all the data. So that definitely helped, and definitely helps, I think, geothermal projects. At the same time, there are white spots where we need to know more. Nico, I think you're active in one of these whiter areas.
Yeah, that's difficult. As I said, we applied for the license in 2018, and right now we are still in basically in the development phase because there's so much unknown in these white spots, and we need additional research compared to the west of Holland, for example, and also the cooperation with EBN, but also with other operators to de-risk this whole area for us. And one thing we know for sure, there are not so many wells, so we depend on what's available, and we need to have this data acquisition wells for the development of our projects.
Thanks.
That makes it very difficult.
Nico, yeah, I can imagine. At the same time, and maybe that would lead into the innovation topic, I think that's a field where innovation can play a role. You're involved in a pan-European project, or even transatlantic. I think there's Canadian partners in there, Deploy the Heat, where also a new drilling technology will be tested at one of your wells. Maybe you can tell a little bit about that.
Particles drilling developed by Kuipers. It is a system or a type of drilling services that we want to apply to in Ede. I think later on today there will be more explanation and a presentation, but basically what we try to do there, what Kuipers try to do, is by pushing particles on a high pressure on the formation to break it and to make a shorter radius and increase your performance of the flow.
So in a way, I would think definitely in the areas where we know less, innovation is still wanted to to get to higher volumes and higher flow rates. Maybe a general question to all of you: if you look, let's say, into that innovation space from your experience, what is like the most exciting thing, or what is the thing you were personally involved in related to innovation in geothermal? Yeah.
And I really appreciate these kind of technical developments for the drilling, but I think we just heard also in the other panel that 1 million more or less upfront in your entire business case has an impact and has all kind of benefits. But if you look at the projects where we're currently spending way too much time on, are those projects which were drilled in that early phase and which made many mistakes, but that's kept in hindsight. They chose wrong materials, they had completions in which were not really built for that specific environment. ESP designs can be more optimized. So when you look at the exploitation phase, those 30, 40 years where it should bring heat to the surface and back into the injection well, the brine, that's where there are so many developments as well. So the completion, material selection, corrosion and scaling understanding. I think we went through a tremendous learning curve in the Netherlands there as well. One of the most exciting ones I've been involved in a lot is the use of GRE, glass fiber reinforced epoxy casing materials. We've made some major mistakes there as well, unfortunately. So some wells even had to be sidetracked after the application. But in general, it's super interesting because it separates the steel from the brines and brings a kind of insulation layer in there. So I know these kind of innovations will continue to take place and have to be improved as well. But I think overall that was a kind of development which for mid-enthalpy was super valuable and applicable now for the rest of the industry.
I think it's also the standardization, what we need. Was mentioned earlier. Increase the scale of the drilling and all the projects, but also the standardization of the projects. I think that's what we are working on as well, but that will save us a lot of cost, and that will help eventually the exploitation.
And it did take place. We went from projects from 5 megawatt to 25 now for quite a lot of development. So let's continue that that curve.
Maybe another important development, of course, as my other panel was saying, we managed to increase the geothermal output of each well, which is very important. We increased with all sorts of improved materials and designs, how long the wells will live. But on the other side, what we did as well is increase the demand and try to get the demand more stable of heat, so the wells can be running much more hours a year and have actually a higher output over a year, so the economics improve. So that's another important aspect, and especially in the horticulture sector, we've been busy to reduce the temperature or increase the temperature delta T, we say it.
Temperature difference.
The temperature difference, and by that we also increase the thermal power of the well. So we've done a number of optimizations over the last years.
Thanks, Radboud. Jorien, any thoughts on innovation?
What I find interesting of what I saw, I mean, as a state company, we're very much focused on the Netherlands. And at one point, I joined the World Geothermal Congress, and I saw what the rest of the world is doing. And actually, the problems are very similar. We have low enthalpy geothermal. That's what we do in the Netherlands. But actually, we can learn much more from each other. And I think COVID hasn't helped in that way. So I would say we should go across borders within Europe, but maybe even towards the US, and learn from each other, because together we can really accelerate.
Yeah, thanks. I couldn't agree more, actually. And one of the things in this GeoThermica network is that we are having joint calls. So we spend, I think, over 100 million now in innovation projects. Parallel to that, we also run strategic actions. And this kind of exchange, also for the market parties, is, at least from our side, seen as very important. And the US is on board of that initiative as well. So I think that's a very good basis to build more bridges. Yeah, maybe it's right time for some questions from the audience or from the online audience. Jamie.
We've got 1,000 from online. You want to start there and warm it up?
Yeah, we can do that.
All right. So first audience question. This one is, it's directed at Nico, but I think it actually could apply to the whole panel. So why don't we throw it to the whole panel? What do you think about essentially exporting, and where are the bright, where are the bright spots in exporting Netherlands-based geothermal innovation to other parts of the world? And can you think of examples where that is happening now?
Exporting in techniques, I assume, that we're talking about.
Innovations.
Innovation.
Yeah.
You start techniques, I will.
Yeah, innovation. I think lessons learned here, that's something what we need to spread. And like you said, building bridges with branch organization all over the world. That's the way how we can share information.
Maybe I can add something to that. We recently did a study for a geothermal operator in Texas because they had simply no consultants available with experience in sedimentary basins, which was interesting to me because it's such a big country, such a long history with a lot of geothermal developments, but that sandstone, aquifer-based, mid-enthalpy geothermal, they simply didn't have those lessons learned. They didn't have the software behind it, which is known for the oil and gas people, which is oftenly used. It's Petrel of Schlumberger, but those kind of software packages, workflows, methodologies, lessons learned, it was all new for them. I was super surprised. It was the region of Oogsten, the oil and gas mecca of the world. Why don't they know this materials? So I think this was obviously one of those, and I think there's more than just this lessons learned from sedimentary basins, but maybe someone else could add those. Yeah.
Yeah, one interesting development we see at the moment is that, of course, we do not only look at heating greenhouses with geothermal, but also a combination with biomass. And we see also recent developments where we have e-boilers to stabilize the electricity net. So we're looking at a mixture of energy sources in order to get the best mix for a value for money for heating horticulture. And that's something we expand and export also to other countries.
Jorien, anything to add? Or?
No, I think everything's already said. There are many questions, so let's go to the next one.
maybe on the, let's say, a bit more generic level, I think what we have tried to do, and I think there is a lot of traction there now, is to engage in the heat transition much more. So I think before we were focusing, or many countries were focusing much more on power production with geothermal. For us, the heat is important, and you heard in the previous panel, Denmark, Germany, other countries here in Europe, they all focus on heat transition. That means that it's geothermal, but it's also about cooling, it's about heat storage, and all these things to get at that on the European agenda. I think that's definitely also one thing that we have worked on from the Netherlands. Jamie, more
Another
questions?
question. This one actually comes from the Netherlands, but comes through virtually. We know the social dimension will increasingly become a hurdle for the geothermal industry, with many tensions and opinions surrounding the drilling phase. Can we discuss in more detail the steps panelists are taking to engage with local communities from an early stage? And do you view this as an obstacle to progress?
Yeah, in a way, it's a special question for me because the project we do were initialized by local communities, by entrepreneurs in the local communities who started thinking about how heating their greenhouses. So in a way, it started local, then it became more international, and now we want to bring it local back again. What we developed also with the assistance of ABN is a standard for communication with the people around your project and how to involve them, also in information, but maybe also in ways of how they can participate. But maybe some of the other ones can enlighten that a little bit more.
I think that the most important part is to start as early as possible in the process and include the community on that. So really already with the first idea, to have them on board and to take them through the process. I think that's one of the big learnings that we had in the past years. Yeah.
I would say definitely, let's say in the greenhouse sector, it were local people. These were local greenhouse farmers, so they already were part of that community. Now it will be interesting how this will work for built environment, for our cities, but also more and more cities are engaging in city utilities. So that also gives probably a local dimension to it. So very curious how it will work. Floris.
Maybe one add-on to this. Yes, it started with pizza nights with the neighbors and explaining a bit of the project without too much detail. But one of the other developments which I think works out quite well is to have a kind of monitoring system in place for some of the geohazards without, for example, seismicity or subsidence or whatever other hazard. Not doing it too much in detail because from an academic point of view, those risks are super low. If you compare it with all kind of other energy methods, production methods, it's really low. But if you do your homework on some of those aspects, be transparent about it. I think there are many examples in the Netherlands, but also in the Eden project in the UK. It really works out if you do your proper homework on some of the technical items.
I think it's not only the technical, you need to do your homework or define your stakeholder for your good stakeholder management. And like what Jorien just said, start as early as possible. But first you need to see who are your stakeholders and then move it on.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Other questions?
In the room, before we keep going down the list of virtual? Anyone? Sure.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, it was really good to sort of hear the journey from wildcat exploration to more performance-driven drilling techniques. And I'm just thinking about the journey we're on in Northern Ireland and the low empathy aquifers we'll be targeting for deeper geothermal projects. And without us having to reinvent the wheel, it's interesting to hear the newer technologies or with the particle drilling in combination with the PDC bit. And I'm just wondering, you know, in line with like this idea of crossing borders, it's maybe something Project Innerspace could look at around geothermal standards for, you know, the more lower empathy reservoirs that we're targeting now. And I just wonder what the panel think around, you know, the development of those type of documents that can help de-risk the drilling process, improve performance, and, you know, limit geohazards and things like that. Because yes, we're going to go and drill our well here, but we would love to execute it to, you know, a high standard and not run into problems that other countries have, you know, experienced before.
Anyone? Any thoughts?
Well, yes, that's something I think I just mentioned. I think it would be very good for us to communicate more within Europe, but also across, outside of Europe, of course, but especially indeed on low enthalpy reservoirs. I mean, that's something that's a special niche that we're getting a lot of knowledge about, and something we can share with each other and share the learnings, and together we'll go faster. I completely agree. I think there's a lot of subsidies that do bring countries together, so that's a way, but there must also be other ways to bring us together. Yeah. It should happen more, I agree.
And maybe just to react on that, yes, it's not only about subsidies, it's also about actions, and definitely on this field, early October there will be a meeting in Dublin, actually, specifically on this team organized by Geothermica. So that could be a stepping stone somehow to more cooperation in this field as well.
Yeah, maybe another advice would be, in the Netherlands we started about 10 years with this geothermal branch organization, where we had all operators combined and exchanging information. We were building standards for the sector, but we do also a lot of knowledge exchange and innovation. So maybe that would be an interesting entry point for you as well, to get more knowledge in the situation in the Netherlands and make use of the things we, as a branch organization, were able to build and hopefully also pass on to you in Northern Ireland.
We have time for one more, and then I'll hand it back to Paul to close. This is a good one because it really riffs on Pivot's theme, which is engagement with the oil and gas industry and geothermal. The question is, several of the panelists mentioned history in the oil and gas industry. Have you faced skepticism at the beginning of projects in the Netherlands because of this history? So I guess this could be a broader question too, though. You know, as you engage with oil and gas, if you come from oil and gas, if you're working with oil and gas, etc., how is that different here in the EU versus, say, Texas? What do you think?
Floris.
Well, one thing I would like to separate in this question is the interest of the oil and gas industry and the technologies and knowledge in the oil and gas industry. If you look at the oil and gas knowledge in Europe, it has been used very significant. So the people, the experts, the workflows, technology know-how, and that really kicked off geothermal. On the other hand, if you look at the investment from that area, it was really, really low. If you look at the cooperation, it was very difficult in the early stage to find that mutual ground, help each other out for that development. They preferred to keep us out of their subsurface, which is maybe a bit of a harsh statement here, but it felt for some of the developers, I'm sure. But that is fully covered now, so that collaboration is now fully in place and works much, much better. I think you can agree on that from EBN's perspective.
Yeah, well, as EBN, we're both in oil and gas, but also in renewables, so we see both sides. We have to say we still need oil and gas in the world, and we can't do without yet. We're working towards a renewable world, but we need to fill the gap that's there, and we hope to fill that with renewables. I do see a lot of cooperation nowadays with oil and gas companies, and of course we're building on their knowledge. We need their knowledge. There was a lot of learning curves from the oil and gas that we're now, and we have to say, we're taking this knowledge and we're taking it even a step further to make it usable for geothermal, because also here we have different wells, it's a different perspective and a different technology in the end. So
yeah, and the link. Oh, sorry, small. The link to Texas is interesting because there's a lot of reutilization of existing well development going on, and that has been identified here as well for over 10 years. But really finding those two parties to work together, from oil and gas and geothermal, to apply it, that has been also difficult due to all kind of legislations and profile difference of the various parties. But sorry, go ahead, Radboud.
Yeah, well, I'm by education an agriculture engineer, so not coming from the mining industry or a mining education. I found it always very interesting to cooperate and work together with people from the gas and oil industry. However, as I view it, there is quite a difference between pumping up gas and oil than pumping up around a lot of water and taking heat of water. That is something I notice a lot of people from gas and oil they don't have that concept. The other concept is that the amount of energy with what has in a cubic meter of mid-enthalpy water is a lot of less than compared to if you have gas and oil. So you have to look much more at your economy aspects in order to make it work. And I think there, especially the gas and oil sector, really needs to look into its economic aspects, because really we need to bring down the price of geothermal heat in order to make it also acceptable for a lot of civilians who are going to use, and a lot of companies who are going to use it instead of gas and oil.
So you need to be much more innovative, I guess, if you want to make a business case out of geothermal. So that's the challenge I think we were discussing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Jamie, more questions or?
No, we're actually, time is up. So
Time is up. Too bad. Then I'll just wrap it up. I hope that we were able to give you a first glimpse of what has been happening and what will happen in the Netherlands in terms of geothermal, in terms of innovation. I think the call for cooperation also internationally is there. From the governmental side, we are open to that. We have already been working on that for many years. But I think also on the industry side in Europe through EJAC or other corporations, but globally as well, I think we're getting into a time frame where that will be really important to exchange in order to move forward quickly. And with that, I think I would like to thank the panel. Thanks Nico, thanks Jorien, thanks Floris, thanks Radboud. And one thing that stuck to my mind is that I learned today that also when Houston has a problem, maybe they can call the Netherlands to solve it. Okay, with that, thank you all, and have a nice pivot.